My name is Nicole, and at 47 years old, I thought I knew my husband better than anyone in the world. Marcus and I had been married for 19 years, building our life together in Austin, Texas, where the summer heat was as reliable as our daily routines. He was a veterinarian, passionate about animals since childhood, and I was a high school English teacher who loved seeing students discover their voice through writing. We had one daughter, Lily, a bright 16-year-old who spent more time with her friends than with us these days, which was normal for teenagers. Our life felt stable, comfortable, predictable in the best possible way, or so I believed until that Wednesday afternoon in late September. School had been canceled due to a facilities issue, giving me an unexpected free afternoon. I decided to surprise Marcus at his veterinary clinic with lunch from his favorite barbecue place. He had been working long hours lately, often coming home exhausted and distracted, and I wanted to show him I appreciated his dedication. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly as I drove across town, the bag of brisket sandwiches filling my car with a mouth-watering aroma. Marcus's clinic, Paws and Claws Veterinary Center, was located in a converted house in a charming neighborhood near downtown Austin. He had opened it 7 years ago, and it had become his pride and joy. I loved visiting the clinic, seeing him interact with worried pet owners and their beloved animals. I pulled into the small parking lot around 2 in the afternoon, noticing that only a few cars were there. The clinic was usually quieter during midweek afternoons, which was perfect for a surprise lunch. I grabbed the food bag and my purse, pushing through the front door into the air-conditioned reception area. The waiting room was empty, except for an elderly man with a sleeping pug on his lap. Behind the front desk sat Karen, the receptionist who had been with Marcus since the clinic opened. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Nicole, hi. We weren't expecting you today," she said warmly. "I know. I wanted to surprise Marcus with lunch. Is he with a patient?" Karen glanced at her computer screen, then back at me. Something flickered across her face, an expression I couldn't quite read. "He's in the back. Last patient just left, so his schedule is clear for the next hour. You can head on back." I made my way through the familiar hallway, passing examination rooms decorated with cheerful posters about pet care. The clinic always smelled like a mixture of antiseptic and dog treats. As I approached the back office area, I heard something that made me slow my steps. Laughter. Not just any laughter, but genuine, unrestrained laughter. Marcus's laugh, rich and full, mixing with a woman's higher-pitched giggles. I recognized that female voice. It was Amber, his veterinary technician. She was 28, recently graduated from tech school, and had joined the clinic about 8 months ago. Marcus had mentioned her often, praising her skill with difficult animals, her quick learning, her dedication to the work. The laughter continued, intimate and easy, the kind that comes from inside jokes and shared moments. I stood frozen in the hallway, the bag of barbecue suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. Through the partially open door of the back office, I could see movement. I should have announced myself. I should have called out, let them know I was there. But something held me back, some instinct that told me to wait, to observe, to understand what was happening before I revealed my presence. Taking a quiet step forward, I positioned myself where I could see through the crack in the door without being visible myself. What I saw made my heart stop. Marcus and Amber were standing close together near the desk, closer than any professional relationship required. She was in her scrubs, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face tilted up toward Marcus with an expression of pure adoration. He was in his white coat, relaxed in a way he never was during work hours. As I watched, Amber reached up and straightened his collar, her fingers lingering on the fabric. Marcus caught her hand, holding it for a moment against his chest, and they shared a look that made my stomach turn. Then, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, they embraced. It wasn't a quick, friendly hug. It was the kind of embrace that speaks of familiarity and affection, the kind where bodies mold together perfectly because they've done this many times before. Marcus's arms wrapped around her waist, and her head rested against his shoulder. They stood like that for what felt like an eternity, swaying slightly, completely comfortable in each other's arms. "I'm so glad we have this time together," I heard Amber murmur. "The days when you're booked solid, I barely get to see you." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice soft and tender in a way that made my eyes sting with tears. "But these quiet afternoons make it all worthwhile." She pulled back slightly to look up at him, and he tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers trailing down her cheek in a gesture so intimate, so familiar, that I felt something inside me shatter. The bag of barbecue slipped from my nerveless fingers, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed through the hallway. Both Marcus and Amber jumped apart as if electrocuted, their heads snapping toward the door. I stood there, visible now, my carefully planned surprise lunch spilled across the clinic floor. "Nicole," Marcus said, his face draining of color, "what are you doing here?" The question struck me as almost funny in its absurdity. What was I doing here? I was bringing lunch to my husband, trying to be a good wife. What was he doing here? That was the real question. "School got canceled," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and strange. "I thought I'd surprise you with lunch." Amber had stepped even further away from Marcus, her face flushed with embarrassment or guilt. "Mrs. Henderson, I should get back to work. I think there are kennels that need cleaning." She moved toward the door, toward me, and I found myself stepping aside to let her pass. She couldn't meet my eyes, hurrying down the hallway like she was escaping a fire. I watched her go, then turned my gaze back to Marcus, who stood frozen in his office, looking like a man who had just watched his entire world collapse. "Nicole, please, let me explain," he started, taking a step toward me. I held up my hand, stopping him. "Don't, not here, not now. It's not what you think. Really, Marcus. Because what I think is that I just walked in on my husband, embracing his technician in a way that looked anything but professional. So please, tell me what it actually is." He ran his hand through his dark hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed and searching for words. "Can we go somewhere private? Talk about this away from the clinic?" I looked at him. This man I had loved for nearly 2 decades, and I didn't recognize him. Or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly for the first time. "I'm going home," I said quietly. "When you're ready to tell me the truth, you know where to find me." I turned and walked back down the hallway, my legs shaking so badly I wasn't sure they would carry me. Karen looked up as I passed the reception desk, and the pity in her eyes told me she had known something was going on. How many people had known? The September heat hit me like a wall as I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. I got into my car and drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying that scene over and over. The way they had stood together, the tenderness in Marcus's voice, the intimate familiarity of their embrace. How long had this been going on? When I pulled into our driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at our house. It was a charming 2-story craftsman we had bought when Lily was a baby, with a wide front porch and a garden I had lovingly tended for years. Inside those walls were memories of birthday parties, holiday celebrations, quiet Sunday mornings, reading the newspaper together. Was it all about to crumble? Finally, I gathered the strength to go inside. The house was empty and silent, Lily still at school for another hour. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed Marcus and I shared, looking around at the familiar space that suddenly felt foreign. On his nightstand was a photo of us from our 10th anniversary, both of us smiling and happy, completely in love. When had that changed? When had I lost him to someone else? Marcus came home 2 hours later, while Lily was still at school. I heard his car pull into the driveway, heard his footsteps on the porch, heard the front door open and close. He found me in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of cold coffee I hadn't touched. "Nicole," he said softly, standing in the doorway like he was afraid to come closer. "We need to talk." "Yes, we do," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "Sit down, Marcus, and please, for once, just tell me the truth." He pulled out a chair across from me, and I could see how exhausted he looked. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing how much to tell me. "About 6 months," he finally admitted. "Since March." 6 months. Half a year of lying, of sneaking around, of making a fool of me. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. "Not yet. Are you sleeping with her?" "No," he said quickly, looking directly at me. "I swear to you, Nicole, we haven't crossed that line. It's been emotional, not physical." "Oh, well, that makes it so much better," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've only been emotionally cheating on me." "I'm not trying to minimize what I've done," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I know I've betrayed your trust, but I need you to understand that I never meant for this to happen." "Then how did it happen, Marcus? Help me understand how you accidentally fell for another woman." He leaned back in his chair, looking up at the ceiling. "Amber started at the clinic right when things were really stressful. You remember? Back in March, we had that parvo outbreak, and I was working 16-hour days trying to save those puppies. She was there with me, helping, understanding what I was going through. I would have understood if you had talked to me about it, I interrupted. I'm your wife, Marcus. That's what I'm here for. I know. But you were dealing with your own stress at school. That situation with the administration, remember? You were coming home exhausted and frustrated, and I didn't want to add to your burden. It was true that last spring had been difficult for me at work, but that didn't excuse what Marcus had done. So instead of talking to your wife about your problems, you found comfort with your technician, I said flatly. It wasn't like that at first, he insisted. We were just colleagues, working together, supporting each other. But somewhere along the way, it became more. She started staying late to help me with paperwork. We'd talk about everything. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Each word felt like a dagger to my heart. I made you feel seen, Marcus. For 19 years, I've been seeing you, supporting you, believing in you. You did. You do, he said, reaching across the table. I pulled away. But somewhere along the way, we stopped really connecting. When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about bills or Lily's schedule or house repairs? I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. He was right. Our relationship had become routine, functional, safe, but not exciting. We were partners in managing a household and raising a child, but we had stopped being lovers, stopped being best friends. That doesn't give you the right to seek that connection elsewhere, I said, my voice trembling now. If you were unhappy, you should have talked to me. We could have gone to counseling, taken a trip together. Instead, you chose to invest your emotional energy in someone else. You're right, he said, and tears were streaming down his face now. You're absolutely right, and I have no excuse for what I've done. I've been selfish and cowardly, and I've damaged the most important relationship in my life. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his betrayal hanging between us like a thick fog. What do you want, Marcus? I finally asked. Do you want to be with her? He looked startled by the question. No, I want to be with you. I want to fix our marriage. Amber is she's young and exciting, but she's not you. She's not the woman I've built a life with, the mother of my child, my partner. Then you need to end it with her, I said firmly. Completely. She needs to leave the clinic, find another job. I can't heal from this if she's still in your life every single day. He looked pained. She's an excellent technician. Finding a replacement will be difficult. I don't care, I said, my voice rising. You made this mess, Marcus. You chose to get involved with an employee. Now you deal with the consequences. You're right, he said quickly. I'll talk to her tomorrow. I'll help her find another position, give her a good reference, whatever she needs. And we're going to counseling, I continued. If you want any chance of saving this marriage, we're going to therapy, and you're going to do whatever it takes to rebuild my trust. I will. Whatever you need, Nicole. I'll do anything. I looked at this man I had loved for so long, and I felt a complex mixture of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal, but also a deep sadness for what we had lost. I need some time, I said quietly. I need space to process this, to figure out if I can forgive you, if I even want to try to save this marriage. Are you asking me to leave? He asked, fear evident in his voice. I thought about it. Did I want him gone? Part of me did, but another part, the part that still loved him despite everything, wanted to work through this together. No, I finally said, but you're sleeping in the guest room, and we need to tell Lily something. She's 16, not a child. She deserves to know that her parents are going through a difficult time. Just then, we heard the front door open. Lily was home from school. Marcus and I looked at each other, and I saw my own fear reflected in his eyes. How do you tell your daughter that her family might be falling apart? The conversation with Lily that evening was one of the hardest things I had ever done. We sat her down in the living room, and I watched her face change from confusion to understanding to hurt as we explained that her father had developed inappropriate feelings for someone at work and that we were going to be working through some challenges in our marriage. Are you getting divorced? She asked, her voice small and frightened. We don't know yet, I answered honestly. We're going to try counseling and see if we can fix what's broken. But I won't lie to you, Lily. This is serious. She looked at her father with an expression that broke my heart. How could you do this to Mom? To us? Marcus's face crumpled. I made a terrible mistake, sweetheart. I'm going to do everything I can to make this right. Lily stood up abruptly. "I need to be alone," she said, and ran upstairs to her room. Moments later, we heard her door slam. The next few weeks were some of the darkest of my life. Marcus, true to his word, let Amber go from the clinic. She found another position quickly, and I tried not to think about whether they had said goodbye. We started seeing Dr. Chen, a marriage counselor recommended by my friend Rachel from school. The sessions were intense and painful, forcing us to confront not just Marcus's betrayal, but all the ways our marriage had been failing long before Amber came into the picture. "You both stopped nurturing your relationship," Dr. Chen told us in one session. "Nicole, when did you last show interest in Marcus's work beyond asking how his day was? Marcus, when did you last plan a date night or surprise your wife with something thoughtful?" I realized with shame that I couldn't remember the last time I had really listened to Marcus talk about a particularly interesting case. I had been so consumed with my own work, with managing the household, with Lily's activities, that I had stopped seeing my husband as anything more than a partner in domestic logistics. And Marcus admitted that he had stopped trying to romance me, had stopped planning the little surprises that had characterized our early relationship. We had both become complacent. But understanding how we got here didn't erase the pain of Marcus's betrayal. There were nights when I lay in bed alone, knowing he was just down the hall in the guest room, and I would cry into my pillow. My friend Rachel became my lifeline during this time. She was divorced herself, having left her husband 3 years earlier after discovering infidelity. She understood what I was going through. "The question you have to ask yourself," she told me over coffee one Saturday morning, "is whether you can truly forgive him. Not just say you forgive him, but actually let go of the hurt and the anger. Because if you can't, then it's not fair to either of you to stay together." "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "Some days I look at him and I remember how much I love him, how good we used to be together. Other days I look at him and all I see is the man who betrayed me." "You are enough, Nicole," Rachel said fiercely. "His choices are not a reflection of your worth. That's on him, not you." Her words helped, but the pain remained. I threw myself into my work, spending extra hours preparing lessons and grading papers, anything to keep my mind occupied. At home, Marcus was trying so hard to make amends. He started leaving me little notes, bringing me coffee in bed, taking over household chores without being asked. He planned a date night, taking me to the Italian restaurant where we had our first date 19 years ago. "Do you remember our first date here?" Marcus asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. I let him, though my instinct was to pull away. "Of course I do," I replied. "You were so nervous you knocked over your water glass." He smiled, a sad, nostalgic expression. "You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. You still are." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe that we could get back what we had lost. But trust, once broken, is so difficult to rebuild. Lily was struggling too. She was distant with both of us, but especially with Marcus. I caught her crying in her room one afternoon and held her while she sobbed. "I always thought you and Dad were different," she said through her tears. "Now I don't know what to believe." "I know, sweetheart," I whispered. "I thought that too." 3 months after discovering Marcus's emotional affair, I realized I had a decision to make. We couldn't continue in this limbo forever. I needed to decide, was I going to truly commit to saving my marriage, or was I going to let it go? The decision came to me on a quiet Sunday morning in December. I woke early and sat on our back porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun rise over our backyard. Austin mornings in winter are crisp and beautiful. I thought about my marriage, about the 19 years Marcus and I had spent together. I thought about our early days, when we were poor graduate students who were deliriously happy. I thought about the day Lily was born, how Marcus had cried when he first held her. I thought about buying this house, planting the garden, hosting Thanksgiving dinners. But I also thought about the last few years, how we had drifted apart without realizing it, how we had stopped being partners and become merely roommates who shared parenting duties. And I thought about the betrayal, the image of Marcus embracing Amber that was seared into my memory. Could I forgive that? More importantly, did I want to? As the sun climbed higher, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't about whether Marcus deserved it. It was about whether holding on to the anger and hurt was serving me or destroying me. And the truth was, the bitterness was eating me alive. That didn't mean I had to stay married to him. I could forgive Marcus and still decide that our marriage was over. But I realized that I didn't want our marriage to be over. Despite everything, I still loved this man, and I was willing to fight for it, but only if he was willing to fight just as hard. When Marcus came downstairs an hour later, he found me still on the porch. "You're up early," he said softly. "I've been thinking," I replied. "About us, about our marriage, about whether I can do this." I saw fear flash across his face, but he sat down next to me and waited. "I've decided that I want to try to save our marriage," I said. "Really try, not just go through the motions, but I need things to change, Marcus." "Anything," he said eagerly. "Tell me what you need." "I need you to move back into our bedroom," I said first. "Not because everything is fixed, but because we're either doing this together or we're not." He nodded, relief evident on his face. "I need regular date nights," I continued. "No excuses, no last-minute cancellations. We need to prioritize our relationship." "Agreed. I need complete transparency. That means I get access to your phone, your email, whatever I need to rebuild trust. Whatever you need to feel secure, you can have it. And I need you to understand that this is going to take time. There will be hard days, days when I'm angry and hurt. You're going to have to be patient with me." "I understand," he said, reaching for my hand. This time, I didn't pull away. "Nicole, I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve your trust." Over the next few months, we worked harder on our marriage than we ever had before. We continued therapy with Dr. Chen, who helped us develop better communication skills. Marcus kept his promises. He planned weekly date nights, sometimes elaborate outings, sometimes simple walks in the park. He left me love notes, brought me flowers, asked about my work with genuine interest. He gave me complete access to his digital life. I worked on my part too. I made an effort to show interest in his work, to ask questions, and really listen. I planned surprises for him, rekindled the physical intimacy that had waned in our marriage. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, moments when something would trigger my memory of that day at the clinic. But Marcus was patient during those times, understanding that healing wasn't linear. Lily slowly warmed back up to her father. Marcus made extra efforts with her, attending all her school events, helping with homework, taking her out for father-daughter dates. Gradually, their relationship began to heal. One evening in March, almost exactly a year after Marcus's affair with Amber had begun, Marcus came home with a large box. "What's that?" I asked. "Open it and see," he said with a mysterious smile. I opened the box to find a beautiful fountain pen and a leather-bound journal. "What's this for?" I asked. "You mentioned once, years ago, that you wanted to write a novel," Marcus said. "I thought maybe it was time for you to pursue that dream." I felt tears spring to my eyes. He had remembered a conversation from early in our relationship, a dream I had mentioned once and then forgotten. "Marcus, this is perfect," I said, hugging him. "Thank you." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus and I sat together on the couch, something we had started doing regularly. No TV, no phones, just the two of us talking. "Do you ever think about Amber?" I asked him. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not in the way you might think. I think about her as a warning, a reminder of how easily I could have destroyed everything that matters to me." "Do you ever regret that it ended?" "No," he said firmly. "What I had with Amber was based on an illusion. What I have with you is real, flawed, and complicated and sometimes difficult, but real. You know me in a way no one else ever could." I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. We weren't fully healed yet, might never be completely back to where we were before, but we were building something new, something stronger. By the time summer arrived, our marriage felt transformed. We had learned to communicate better, to prioritize each other, to not take our relationship for granted. One Saturday afternoon, I was in the backyard working in my garden when Marcus came out to join me. He knelt down next to me, helping me plant new flowers. "Remember our first spring in this house?" he asked. "We spent weeks out here, planting everything from scratch. And look at it now," I said, admiring the mature trees, the flowering bushes. "It took years, but it became what I imagined." "That's like us," Marcus said. "We had to tend carefully to what we wanted to grow. But look at us now." I smiled at him. He was right. We had survived a storm that could have destroyed us, and we had come out stronger. That evening, the three of us had dinner together on the back porch, something that had become a weekly tradition. Lily was laughing at one of Marcus's terrible dad jokes, and I looked at them both and felt overwhelmingly grateful. grateful that I had found the strength to forgive, grateful that Marcus had done the hard work to earn back my trust, grateful that we had fought for our family instead of letting it crumble. Later that night, lying in bed next to Marcus, his arm around me, I thought about that terrible day at the clinic when my world had shattered. But I also thought about everything that had come after, the hard work and the healing and the rebuilding. "I love you," Marcus whispered in the darkness. "I love you too," I replied, and I meant it with my whole heart. Our story hadn't ended that day in the clinic. It had simply entered a new chapter, one where we had to fight for each other, work for our happiness, and never take each other for granted. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt at peace with the journey we had taken, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together.